West Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff and Bill Show on News Talk 710 KNUS.
It's 8 a.m. in the Mile High City on this Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show, News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest insights, hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Coming up after news and comment with Blake Olson, we're going to talk with Ian Escalante of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. In response to a Denver Post article, which was just kind of like, yeah, guys, we said this was going to happen. And now progressives come along and go, gee golly, can you believe this happened? Yes, and in fact, this is the point of a lot of this anti-gun legislation, is to shut down gun shops. Progressives hate gun stores. They've never been in them. They don't know the people that own them. They feel like they're evil and bad and they need to be shut down. And so in a Denver Post article titled "More Than 24 Gun Laws in Colorado Have Reshaped Firearm Ownerships and Added Barriers. From waiting periods to background checks and ammo laws, the state has some of the strictest gun laws in America." Yeah, no joke. And what's shocking about all this, from my perspective, is being somebody who lived through 2013 when Democrats, even the whiff of a gun restriction law got you recalled. 12 years later, Democrats are running whatever gun restriction law they want with no headwinds, no efforts to stop them in a way that is effective at this point, and the voters just continue to put them back in power. How in 12 years did we go from a freedom-loving, Second Amendment respecting state to now one of the strictest states in the nation when it comes to gun laws, and Colorado, a historically Western state? What is going on here? We're going to talk with Ian Escalante, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, in response to this article. But now it's time for news and comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Good morning, Tuesday, 71, beautiful outside, partly cloudy, expecting a high of 98 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, lock 'em up, lock 'em all up. Will we ever see that? Who knows? Probably not, but the majority of Americans want the greaseballs like Brennan, Clapper, Comey, Clinton, Schiff, Obama behind bars. Next up, here's John Solomon.
This is a major development. We told you last week that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, had given permission for a strike force to begin. That's a very specific tool the Justice Department uses on major conspiracies. And we told you then we would know it was getting serious when the grand jury jumped into action. We now know that a grand jury will be impaneled. Most likely, my sources are telling me, it could be in Florida.
In Florida, where the criminals raided DJT's home. Comedian Jim Brewer on how the crap media like CNN brainwashes viewers. This is classic. If you can see the video, you got to look it up. Jim Brewer, Breuer, comedian.
Listen, not to what she's saying, but listen to how they interrupt and the words they use.
Released in the months leading up to the November 2016 election. concluded that Russia had neither the intent nor capability to impact the outcome of the U.S. election.
Doesn't matter.
On December 5th.
We've been listening there to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, continuing on what has now been a multi-day effort, not only with public statements like this, but release of documents to attempt to back up the quite extreme allegation.
His facial expression is just classic. His mouth is wide open. His eyes are wide open. His phone is to the microphone.
In the attempt to give these extreme allegations, how do you not understand that is dipping in your mind and telling you what to think before you even have a moment to digest the situation? That is no different than I walk in and go, this person is attempting to give these outrageous allegations, and if you can't stand this person or you can't stand the other news, you're already all in. If I'm a liberal, I'm like, yeah, it's crazy allegations. It's just insane. That is called brainwashing.
And that's what we see every day and hear every day. Be aware of it. Jim Brewer, once again, check it out. Aurora police say at least 4 people are recovering from injuries after a commuter rail train and a semi crash near the intersection of Smith Road and Sable on Monday. The train operator has injuries from broken glass, and 3 passengers suffered minor injuries. 57 passengers were on the train at the time. Texas Governor Abbott has authorized civil arrest warrants for lawmakers who left Texas to deny the chamber a quorum on Monday. More than 50 Democrats fled to Illinois, New York, and Massachusetts, home of the commies, to prevent Republicans from advancing redistricting maps. Right, Jeff?
I'm the dog, the big bad dog, the bounty hunter.
That's right.
I would pay such good money to watch him hunt these folks down. So I was a big fan, still big fan of Dog the Bounty Hunter. Dwayne Chapman, great guy.
Yeah.
And I loved his series, right? It started out with real people that had escaped, like the Warrens, and these were bad guys, right? He was like knocking down fences and stuff. And he was in Hawaii, and eventually they just kind of ran out of people. So they were, towards the end of his series, they were just kind of grabbing guys at cafes that had just forgot that they ever had a court date. Right? So dog comes storming in, and they're like, this guy's like eating his omelet. Right?
Exactly.
Oh, I had a court. I didn't even know. No, I had a court date. Dogs, you know, taking them out and all that stuff. Man, some of these Democrats in Texas, to just watch Dog chase them down would be a dream. I would pay like pay-per-view times 10 level dollars to watch Dog chase these guys down.
That'd be awesome.
It doesn't even necessarily have to be Democrats. To watch any politician.
True. I agree.
Guys, you know, they can hardly. It reminds me of these at these conventions when you try to watch them dance. They're so goofy, and they're trying to dance. I'm thinking of Hillary, like looking at the balloons. You know, they're just they're not naturally coordinated. They're just goofy people. So to watch them try to run from Dog the Bounty Hunter, oh my gosh, my dreams.
Love that. I would love that. I'm right there with you. God, I would actually pay for cable to watch that. Oh, wow. Beautiful. Hey, here's what Eric Holder has to say about it. His brain's already getting ahead. They got it going on here.
They were somehow able to hold on to the House in 2026. That is the House of Representatives that would have to certify who won the presidential election come 2028, 2029. Now, if you want to play with fire, and that's what we're doing here, you put in a bunch of partisan hacks who are not supposed to be in the House, who are there because of gerrymandering and a whole range of other things that Republicans are doing, and then put at risk the possibility that that body would not certify who the next president was. That's why this is a national problem. This is not something only the Texans ought to be concerned about.
Oh, here they go. Never let a crisis go to waste. And they're going to try to use it in the presidential election in about 3.5 years. Eagles Pro Bowler running back Saquon Barkley turning down the president's offer to team up. The Eagles star has declined DJT's invitation to join the 30-member Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition. The running back told the media on Monday he was shocked when requested, but just couldn't commit due to time constraints. I totally get that. I understand that. He would love to help DJT if he could. Rockies drilled by the Jays 15-1. First pitch tonight, 6:40 at Coors, 69 in Lone Tree, 70 in Lafayette, 71 in Denver. Billy and the Bounty Hunter coming up. They continue on Tuesday. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
Your 710 5-day forecast, it's going to be mostly sunny and hot today, and that'll set the trend for basically the rest of the work week. This afternoon, we're going to see highs in the middle and upper 90s with clear skies tonight and lows in the mid-60s. Upper 90s for Wednesday and Thursday, might even hit 100 in spots, keeping it sunny and dry with lows upper 60s, trending cooler in the 80s this weekend. Weather brought to you by L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, dependable service, call 720-851-1691 or visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. Meteorologist Don Watzel in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. The Denver Post writing the sweep of new gun restriction laws started relatively slowly with 2019's Extreme Risk Protection Order, but the pace of new restrictions has picked up unmistakably since then, with lawmakers putting stricter and broader rules on nearly all facets of firearms. Those efforts culminated this spring with the passage of Senate Bill 3, a law that, when it goes into effect in August of 2026, will restrict the sale of many semi-automatic firearms that have detachable magazines unless the buyer has passed a safety course. The Denver Post has this in their headline. State of Colorado has some of the strictest gun laws in America. And as a native of Colorado, I'm like, whoa, like we all knew this. To see it in the Denver Post and to have them finally acknowledge this is nice. But I also sit here and go, what happened to our state? As I mentioned in 2013, if you had the thought of trying to restrict our Second Amendment rights, you were recalled. Now Democrats continue to get elected more and more, even in spite of some of these gun restriction laws. What is happening to the voters of Colorado? Give us some insight on this. I can't think of anyone better because he's the tip of the spear down at the state capitol when it comes to fighting for our Second Amendment rights. Ian Escalante, Executive Director, Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, joins us. Good morning, Ian. Thanks for joining the Jeff and Bill Show.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff and Bill. Can you guys hear me okay?
Pretty well. It was cutting a little bit there, but we'll see how it goes.
Oh,
yeah, Ian, we got you.
It's good to be back on here as always. And yeah, I read that article, and I read another article from Colorado Public Radio yesterday, and it all kind of had me in disbelief. But I mean, it's true. And I've been on here a handful of times, and I discussed everything that was going on in the legislative session, and really the way the gun grabbers this session said, all right, you all can go pound sand. We don't care about your rights. We're going to pass these 14 laws whether you like it or not. And really, we're going to pass these laws and we're going to drag these legislators kicking and screaming. And they entered a suicide pact, and they said, all right, we got the power. This is the year to get it done. I'm sure I don't think they believe that they're going to be able to hold on to power, given the fact that their records have been horrendous. They have really destroyed the state. You know, I used to say all about destroyed the state, but I mean, at this point, they really have destroyed the state. And they have no record to run on. And really, as soon as the GOP gets their head out of the sand, and we get people...
Hey, Ian, we've got some technical issues. Billy's going to try to call you back here. In the meantime, let me tell you about Dan Caplis and Dan Caplis Law. Look, I've known Dan for well over a decade. Pro-life, pro-family, pro-faith, pro-America. That matters because who you choose as a lawyer to represent you in an injury case says a lot about you to everybody involved in the case. Dan Caplis, the son of a police officer and a former seminarian who's dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who are hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado state history. Dan Caplis Law is so trusted, he's the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551, 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S, law.com. All right, I'm hoping that this isn't a phone issue because we had some challenges with the other callers. But, Bill, we got Ian Escalante, Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners, back. Ian, hopefully we've got a better connection, my friend.
Yes. Can you guys hear me a little better now?
Yeah, that's a little better.
Yeah, we do. All right, so please continue.
Absolutely. So, I heard what you were saying about the article, and I mean, what I was saying is the fact of the matter is that they, this past session, said, we don't really care what any of y'all think. We're going to ram this through no matter what. And as you know, because you followed it and you were down at the Capitol, we put everything we had into this fight trying to defeat all this. But the problem is that they've seized power in this state. They've slowly but surely done it. And now that they've really seized power and the GOP in this state has really not put up much of a fight whatsoever, and they're really no longer an electoral player in this state. The Democrats see themselves as having unfettered reign and more or less the ability to do whatever they want without consequences. And now, first they went after the social issues, first they went after the environment, then they pushed the radical homosexual agenda, and now they're coming after our guns.
Ian is exactly right on that, and Bill's going to try to reach you on a different line. We may have problems with this direct line, so Ian, he's going to call you right back on a different line. In the meantime, we'll continue. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking with Ian Escalante, the Executive Director of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. Now, Ian, you guys, tip of the spear. You're down there fighting at the Colorado State Capitol, and you laid it out perfectly. The Democrats started in this effort with social issues. They've now transitioned entirely into Second Amendment issues, which is a dramatic change for Colorado because we were generally a socially libertarian state. If you want a gay marriage, yeah, you'd gay marriage. If you want to smoke pot, yeah, you could smoke pot. But it's almost been like a deal with the devil at this point, to where you got some of those social issues, abortion, doctor-assisted suicide, but you're going to give up all of your now Second Amendment rights to the left. Ian, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it. And you know, the issues that you mentioned before were really the Democrats pretending to care about so-called freedom. I wouldn't necessarily call those the freedoms that the founding fathers fought for and died for, but nonetheless, they were freedoms, and they kind of snuck in under those guys. But in reality, you know, we got bait and switch. We got those. You know, a lot of people in Colorado said, okay, you know, we don't think you should go to jail for smoking pot, which, you know, I don't even necessarily disagree with. But at the same time, now, you don't get to say much in your child's lives anymore. You got to join a union. And now, you pretty much not open up a gun shop unless you completely turn your business over to the state. The gun shops in the state are no longer private run. They're state run. And they are state run with pieces of private ownership. But at the end of the day, with the way they're regulated, the way everything is going with the new permitting with the Department of Revenue, our gun stores are state run now. And now every gun shop must do exactly what the state says, and the sheriff can't save them anymore. All that happens is that the state just goes ahead and pulls their dealer permit. So they pretty much are completely at the mercy of the Department of Revenue now.
Incredible. Well, Ian, I sure appreciate your time today. I'm so sorry that we're dealing with tech issues here. So we'll be sure to connect with you again. It's all on our side, but Ian, great work at Rocky Mountain Gun Owners. You guys are fighting the good fight to protect our Second Amendment rights. I'm a member of Rocky Mountain Gun Owners and encourage you all to become members as well. Ian, thanks again for taking time to join us. All right, Bill, it's an important article in the Denver Post. I'm glad that they're covering it, but I sit here going, guys, this is what we have been saying was going to happen, that you're going after law-abiding citizens. And there's one line in here that just makes my skin crawl, and it comes from Tom Sullivan. Look, I understand Tom's background. He lost a son in the Aurora Theater shooting. He's highly motivated, and no one's going to blame him for being highly motivated to try to deal with gun violence. But when talking about the process that somebody has to go through with regards to getting a new gun and now an assault rifle or anything that's semi-automatic, and the hoops you're going to have to jump through, he goes, well, you can eventually get there, essentially. If you're really motivated, yeah, you'll eventually get. I know it's a 3-day waiting period. I know now you have to go through all of these issues and training, and it's becoming more. But you really care about it, you'll eventually get there. And it confirmed for me this belief that the real restrictions that are being put on our society are on the law-abiding gun owners. That's what, I mean, he's almost admitting it at this point. Whereas the criminals, and we're still dealing with violent crime issues in the state. It's not like those have really dropped off. since all these gun restrictions have come in. But, if you really want to do this, there's still a process. You're just going to have to jump through a lot of hoops. Okay, I understand that if that's, something that's maybe not constitutionally protected, right? That's what gets me on this. This is a right that's protected in the Constitution, and the state of Colorado, which was a socially libertarian state, has now gone this far to put in all these restrictions, and I think it's wrong. I think it abandons the true nature of Colorado, and it's probably one of the best reflections of how this state has transformed in the last decade. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have layers of them, in part because this is in some ways just a reflection of where the voters are. I mean, we can go back to last hour and talk about the Texas Democrats running away from the state because the Texas Republicans are within their right to redraw the district boundaries. And the response is, well, they won the election, so they get to change this, and that's okay. I would turn that 180 degrees away and say the Democrats won the majority of the seats here. They're allowed to change these things. That's the result of the election. And again, I'm not happy necessarily on either example. I'm not happy with what the Democrats are doing here in Colorado based on gun laws. In some cases, I think they're doing a good job. And I don't like what the Texas Democrats are doing right now. But that's kind of the functionality of what we were talking about as far as elections. I think that there is, again, it's weird for me to hear from conservatives at times that in other states where we have, we have restrictions on abortion rights, we could look at in the future restrictions on transgender rights. There are even some states that are floating ideas, not legislatures, but people inside of the state floating ideas of taking away same-sex marriage rights and things. And we would turn around and say, well, based on, the state and how it's made up, they are little laboratories of democracy. Yet, in this case, it's not a little laboratory of democracy. And I understand your Second Amendment right, but inside of that Second Amendment, it doesn't say on demand necessarily. It doesn't say it needs to be available through a vending machine process. It doesn't mean that it has to be the easiest, most accessible thing possible. There are no guidelines there. And so that's where the Democrats are taking this. And what I would caution all of my friends that are Second Amendment supporters, and I am one of them, I am a gun owner, but understand that there are portions, and large portions in some areas, and especially in Colorado and the Denver metro, large portions of the electorate that have been asking for something to be done about gun violence. And when the response is coming from mostly Republicans, there's not much we can do. This is an individual right, thoughts and prayers, let's hope it doesn't happen, things like that. It doesn't necessarily work. So when someone shows up with a solution, even though it's a bad solution, that solution looks more palatable when it is framed against no solution. And I understand the critique of, we're only going after the law-abiding citizens as far as the gun owners. Yeah, we could say that about insurance. We could say that about driver's licenses. We could say that about theft. We could say that about a lot of things. I mean, there are a lot of people that know we don't walk into our grocery stores and steal stuff. But we got a portion inside of the Denver metro that have been doing it a lot. I had to wait at a grocery store yesterday and push the little button to get Pedialyte. The little baby thing that you drink, the electrolytes. That's locked up, but behind a thing. And I had to push a button, and I wait for somebody to come over there. I had to push it several times. That's but not because of all the law.
Perfect example.
But again,
isn't that a perfect example? You're going to lock up somebody. You're either going to lock up law-abiding citizens or criminals. And in Colorado, we've decided not to lock up criminals. In fact, you could rape a child and get probation. In the meantime, Bill's got to get Pedialyte from a locked box.
Well, for me, it's an example of because of what happened, the solution is this. While it is an imperfect solution, that's where our solutions are. So that's why I come back to this, is that the electorate, especially inside of Colorado, while it has been going more liberal, has been sitting there saying, we need something done. And so when the two groups that are available to vote for, one side has some solutions, and we may say they are imperfect, wrong-headed, and dumb, okay. But when that is contrasted against no solutions, dumb solution is going to win. It is dumb to have Pedialyte locked up.
Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes, it is. What would be the solution? I mean, there have been calls for things like...
For instance, with school shootings, I think we've proven that if you have gun-free zones, you get school shootings.
Walk me through that. So it's just because it's a gun-free zone? Don't we have gun-free zones? Lots of places. The issue being the weapon, isn't it? And what the person chooses to do with the weapon. Just like the idea that I can follow the rules and go and get a driver's license and drive a car, or I can not follow the rules and do other things with it. We can go out there and steal. Once someone has that in their possession, it's their individual choices. I'm not certain that what would be the solution. If we don't make the school a gun-free zone, are we going to make it look like a concentration camp where we have barbed wire and people stationed outside and guns? And then again, where's the money behind that, and what would we do?
The best way to stop a school shooter is a good guy with a gun, right? Whether it's police, whether it's a teacher, whether it's armed security, any of that stuff, that's the best way to stop a school shooting.
No, I disagree.
Because you put up a sign and say, gun-free zone, and don't come here with a gun.
No,
people that
the
are
best
intent
way
on school shootings who are proving that they don't want to follow the law are sure as heck not going to listen to a neatly posted sign.
Yeah, but the one thing we need to make sure is they get a gun. That's the problem.
What do we need to? Why are we making sure that they can get a gun? We already have restrictions on their abilities to get guns, don't we? Anyways,
and are those working? Are those working? Because people are still getting those guns and walking into the schools. So, I mean, the idea that, and when I say, Jeff, when I talk about the idea of not having the solutions, that would be my example. When I sit here and say these people that are motivated to do this can still get their hands on guns, and you're like, but there's no solution there. You're like, well, that's going to happen. It's just going to happen. That's why the electorate in Colorado. That's why the electorate in Colorado is looking for bad solutions, because the example is the people that are wanting to do things like this should still be allowed to have the guns. That's why.
We're not saying that they should be able to have a gun, but what we're saying is that the restrictions that Tom Sullivan and the rest of these folks are putting up there are not going to stop somebody that's intent on killing lots of people. So they're going to commit the ultimate crime to begin with, right? They're going to murder innocent human beings. And we think that they're going to all of a sudden go through a process to get that gun, follow all the rules, or they're just going to steal the gun, or they're just going to take it from somewhere, or they're going to purchase it illegally. And all these rules that the Democrats are setting up are targeting law-abiding citizens. They're making it harder for them. They're shutting down gun shops. And to this point, I think they know they're doing this. I think it's their intent to do this. I think they want gun shops shut down. And in doing so, they're really going after law-abiding citizens. That's what I believe. So give us a call. We'd love to have you join us. 303-696-1971. 303-696-1971. Or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. 720-819-5115. Do you like the Colorado we live in? Do you like these gun restriction laws? Do you think they're contributing to a safer Colorado? Do you think things are getting better as a result of this? Have we had fewer school shootings? And do you attribute that to some of these rules? And in fact, you have more and more restrictions coming up. Are you proud of the Colorado you live in now? Or do you feel like this is abandonment of the history and the traditions that made Colorado great? We were a socially libertarian state. We didn't want the government in our lives. And now we've done a deal with the devil in order to get Some things like marijuana, doctor-assisted suicide, abortion, all those social freedoms, and I put those in quotations, we've given up now our Second Amendment rights and allowed progressives to control the state, and we're now actually less free than we were originally. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. All right, let's talk advanced hair restoration. Summer is a time to feel and look your best, but I'm not talking about your abs or tan. Guys, I'm talking about your hair. Restore that bald spot, reverse your receding hairline, and add volume to thinning during Advanced Hair's once yearly summer savings event. Advanced Hair's simple one-day treatment begins to regrow your own natural hair the very next day, and they guarantee your new hair will grow. There's absolutely no one I trust more than Dr. Tanya Pauls and her team at Advanced Hair. Take advantage of your flexible summer calendar and get the most hair for your dollar. Advanced Hair Summer Sales event is on for a limited time, so get the details and schedule your free consultation today. Here's their phone number, 720-459-HAIR, 720-459-HAIR. One-day treatment, life-changing results with Advanced Hair. Your new hair is guaranteed to grow. Check out the incredible before and afters and take advantage of their best offer ever. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. Advancedhair.com will continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's talk leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Morrison?
Yes, sir.
All right. Oh, there we go. Okay, Ben Morrison, good morning. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Yeah, hey, can you hear me?
Sorry, the phone is doing it again. Oh, this is great.
I don't know if you can hear
Go
me or
ahead,
not,
do
but
your best, Ben.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I am a person that does own guns. I have 3 shotguns. But I've just never been one of the gun longs. It's like really scared about having regulations on them. You know, I think it's perfectly fine. A lot of the stuff they're asking for, I think it's reasonable. You know, if you take a safety class before you go out purchase a firearm, I think all that stuff is perfectly within the norm and okay for, you know, the government to install. I don't need a 30-round magazine for my gun. You know, I'm not ready to use it and coin or do anything like that. So it's like, why do I need that stuff? I don't. I just don't need it. You know, I don't use it for. I'm not worried about self-protection because I know the reality is the thing. And
well, I appreciate the call, man. It's cutting out on us. I'm gonna try to reboot the phone system. And apologies, Robert. I might lose you as well. I don't know what's going on at the interface. But now, Jeff, your reactions. I think what Ben was talking about from what we heard there was
that they're reasonable.
Yeah.
So, look, if you put gun ownership in the same category as saying a driver's license, right? What you're admitting is that it's a privilege. No one has a right to drive a car. You have a privilege to drive a car that's granted to you by the state, and so you have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops. And those hoops are getting more and more extensive. We have teenagers that are learning to drive in our house right now, and I've got this little app on my phone, and I have to record because they have to get 50 hours of driving during the permitting process, including 10 hours at night. And so if you believe and you start to think, okay, the gun ownership is a privilege, then that makes sense, right? It's a privilege granted to you by the state, and therefore you must follow the rules that have been put together by the state in order to get that privilege. Is that good for America, to think of gun ownership as a privilege? I don't think that falls with the intent of the Second Amendment and what it was all about to begin with, right? Second Amendment wasn't about militias owning guns. It wasn't about a certain segment being able to own guns. It was about a well-armed citizenry being an important check against the tyranny of the government. Remember the founding of this nation, right? We fought against our colonial leaders and shot at them. Right? I think we've done this kind of revisionism that the 4th of July was just kind of a nice patriotic rebellion against our colonial oppressors. It was a war. It was life and death. We took guns and shot bullets at people that we felt were oppressing us and launched this country, the greatest country in the history of the earth, upon that notion. Then we fought back. And so the Second Amendment right, according to our founders and what's been certified at the U.S. Supreme Court in subsequent cases, is that gun ownership is an important check against tyranny. And I'm not saying that we need to go fight a war. In fact, I think you need to look back at the founding of this country and go, the point that they got to under the oppression that took place by England was at a point where they had really no other choice. The government was broken across all 3 branches. Judges were paid for by the king. Oftentimes, if you wanted to appeal to the king, you had to go all the way to England. He didn't make it very easy here. And then he controlled the legislature, too, and could just disband it. So all 3 governments were, all 3 branches of government were broken to the point where the settlers had no recourse whatsoever at that point but to rebel. So I'm not saying at any point right now that we need to take up arms against our government. I'm not saying that. But you have to remember that the Second Amendment was a right. Your rights don't come from the government. They come from God, and they are protected from government interference. Remember, that's what the Constitution's all about. It's not about limiting people, it's about limiting government. And the founders felt that your ability to own a gun, to own a weapon, was a God-given right to defend your family, yes, to be able to hunt, to provide for yourself, yes, and as an important check against the U.S. government. And so when you start to go, well, yeah, all these rules, all these restrictions that you have to jump through, well, they just make sense. I think what you're doing is assuming that gun ownership is a privilege granted to you by the state, and therefore jump through all these hoops and able to do it just like you would do a driver's license. In fact, it's a right granted to you by God, and the state needs to be restricted from infringing upon that right.
Why didn't they put that in the Second Amendment? Why didn't they put any of that in the Second Amendment? Because no, they didn't. No, they didn't. At the beginning of that, you started out saying, this isn't about militias. This isn't about, it says militia in the amendment. It doesn't say fight the tyranny in the amendment. It doesn't say personal in the amendment. Right of the people. It's a collective. The debate over the Second Amendment was foundationally about a standing army. That's really what it is.
Bill.
Yeah. No, that's in the Federalist Papers.
Militia that's in the necessary to the security of a free state, right? So a well-regulated militia is helpful to secure the freedom of
but what was the argument?
State,
what was the argument about a state militia versus a standing army in the Federalist Papers? That was where this comes from. The Second Amendment.
The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Yeah, but you're ignoring the first part of that.
Of the people.
How come you can't read the whole thing and hold it in context?
I just read the whole thing to you.
But again, it's an independent and dependent clause. The dependent clause puts restrictions on the independent clause. That's how English works. We don't have to be constitutional scholars. We don't have to be geniuses. That the qualifications to the independent clause are placed by the defense.
The Constitution has agreed with me. The Supreme Court has agreed with me.
Recently, but in the past it agreed with me. And that's fine. And so we can talk about it.
In the past, the only people that were allowed to own guns were militias?
The representation as far as militia ownership was very important. Yeah. Yes. In fact, that was kind of the bromide as far as whether or not you had an individual right to have a gun. Nobody until a recent ruling, and I forget the name of the citation. I'm sorry, I just don't. But that was the first time. That was the first time you got an individual right. Up until then, hundreds of years, nothing about an individual right until that Supreme Court decision.
I'm sorry,
and before,
Bill, you're saying that the only people that owned guns in, let's say, the 1880s were militias?
No, what I'm saying is, if we go back to why the Second Amendment is written the way it is, it's because it was an argument between having a standing army and not. It's a federalism argument at its core. There are some other issues therein, but the issue being that we had just fought a nation that had a standing army that had got to do whatever they wanted on the whim of a king. Our founding fathers were worried about having a centralized army under the control of a president because they felt, given recent past, that that could repeat itself. So what they did is they then, it was a balance between states, and there's some other things that are wrapped in there based on slave ownership, but it was a balance between the states in order to have these militias that could then be called up in order to create a standing army if you need one, but then it also, as it outlines in the Second Amendment, the right of a free state. So it preserved states' independency while also allowing for a large army if we needed one in case the French or somebody else got a little uppity.
The Bill of Rights is about states?
The Second Amendment, the argument in the Federalist Papers...
There's nothing else in any of the other amendments that's allocated to states. It's about individual freedoms. The First Amendment, the Third Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and then all of a sudden we want to go, the Second Amendment has to do with states?
No, the Second Amendment has to do with the militias and defense. That's how it was written. That's exactly the arguments that were happening inside of Jeff, this is exactly the argument the Founding Fathers were having inside of the Federalist Papers. It's exactly what they talked about. The idea of, do we have a standing army or don't we? And the compromise was to have a militia. They didn't. And again, if you think that it is an individual right to own a gun, they could have put that in there. They didn't.
They did.
No, they didn't.
Bill,
they didn't. They have an independent and a dependent clause. Here, okay, give me an example.
The right of the
I will show
people
you.
to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
I know, but you're ignoring the first part of it.
The state.
You're ignoring the first part of it that puts restrictions on it. Let me outline it this way. If we had in Colorado something that said after training, testing, and practice, everybody in Colorado over the age of 16 has the right to a driver's license. You wouldn't say I just granted everybody a universal right to a driver's license. You would say there are restrictions on how and when you can get that driver's license. All I'm saying is English tells us exactly what they were trying to do. In that statement with the driver's license, I didn't give everybody a blanket right in Colorado that once you reach the age of 16, they have a driver's license. There are qualifications and restrictions on that, just like in the Second Amendment. There are qualifications and restrictions. If our founding fathers wanted to say that it was only an individual right, they wouldn't have had the dependent clause. That wouldn't have existed. They are smart enough men. They crafted this to be the simplest and most elegant Second Amendment or amendment for reason. And we still managed to screw it up.
Weirdest revisionism.
No, it isn't.
You're saying that the only people with the right to bear arms were militias.
Go back to the Federalist
Papers. Who owned
Papers.
guns in 1880s? You think the militias just owned guns? It's like this idea that what happened in the 1940s, 50s, 60s was all of a sudden this belief in gun restrictions showed up, and this revisionism of the Second Amendment when all of history prior to that, people owned guns in their homes. They went hunting with them. They used them in self-defense. And it was a check on tyranny. The founders understood that. And then all of a sudden in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you go, well, the only people that should have guns or no restrictions on guns are militias.
No, it's again, I'm not the one doing revisionist history. You are, based on the foundations of this country and what the Second Amendment debate was about. Go back to the Federalist Papers.
There's a right to bear arms in this country?
No, there is. But there's a restriction on it. It's placed in the Second Amendment. Yes. There's a right, but there's restrictions on it. And there are restrictions that can be placed on it. Yes. Yep, absolutely. That's what our founding fathers wrote. If they wanted it to be individual, they would have just made it a simple declarative sentence. Would have made a simple declarative sentence. They would have made a simple declarative sentence if it was something else.
You can join the text message conversation. Give us a text, 720-819-5115. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.